Once in a while, you come across a pay-per-view that is effectively perfect. You come across a wrestling show that really captures not only the zeitgeist, not only the Attitude Era or the era that's appropriate for the pay-per-view, but it also captures the concept and the entertainment format, the medium of wrestling. In my opinion, there is no pay-per-view that encapsulates this more than this week's Retro Review, Survivor Series 1998, cuckolds. Now, this pay-per-view took place shortly before the Hater started watching WWE. At this point, the Hater had been in the United States for maybe a year. A fresh immigrant, if you will. Probably didn't speak very good English. But I did watch this pay-per-view by renting it in Blockbuster many years later because it was a very good pay-per-view, and quite frankly, it's one of the best values you'll ever get in your life from renting anything at Blockbuster, you know what I mean? So anyways, the Hater, was like 11 at the time or some shit like that, maybe 10, I don't remember, probably 11, just freshly 11, and most of you were likely still in your father's balls at this time. So let me learn you something, and let me tell you about one of the best pay-per-views of all time. And even though this pay-per-view is from the last century, the Hater will review it like I always do it. And that is segment by segment, cuckolds. So there is a lot in this pay-per-view. This pay-per-view was a little bit less than 3 hours, so shorter than pay-per-views nowadays. And instead of having 4 matches like a pay-per-view would have today, this has, believe it or not, 18 motherfucks, all right? 18 matches took place in this pay-per-view. Now, as a result of this, the matches were obviously short, but nevertheless, there was no wasted motion. There were no commercials in the middle of the pay-per-view. It was just match after match after match. As a result, this pay-per-view didn't have many segments either, but it did have some, and we're going to talk about those as well. The show starts out with like a prepackaged, video promo, right? That basically explains what's going to happen. Then we go to JR and King, the greatest announcers of all time, and JR tells us it's a 14-man tournament. So effectively, it's a 16-man tournament, but Kane and The Undertaker player have gotten buys. So as a result of those buys, we have 14 men competing in this tournament. The tournament is for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship. So JR tells us, for the slow kids in the back, that tonight we will crown a new champion no matter what. JR also mentions that in order to advance, you have to win, right? Losers do not advance in this tournament. This actually will be relevant later on, right? It's actually a very big part of the presentation of this pay-per-view, although it doesn't seem like it at that point. Automatically, this event is better than any pay-per-view in the Triple H era. The stakes are higher than they ever could be. You have a 14-man tournament to determine the WWE champion, right? Like nowadays, you're lucky to get a WWE title match in a pay-per-view, and if you do, it'll be like Cookie Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre, who honestly wouldn't be good enough to be in this tournament. Anyways, the general storyline here is that Vince McMahon wants a corporate champion, and the person that he's backing is Mankind. Mick Foley cuts. Mankind looks at Vince McMahon like a father in the storyline, and Vince wants him to be champion. So Mankind comes out in a suit, and the two antagonists of Vince McMahon are, number one, of course, the Rattlesnake himself, Stone Cold, and obviously as a secondary antagonist to Vince, The Rock, all right? So that's kind of like the general ethos and the general setup of this tournament, right? Mankind is also the hardcore champion, and this should be noted because he is one of the people that is expected to win this tournament, and he's the hardcore champion. This is how you elevate a jobber title, right? When the 24/7 championship came out, they never explained why all those jobbers were running around chasing the title to become 24/7 champion. It's like, you never get any exposure. You only get exposure in the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week championship scenario, right? It's not like the 24/7 champion ever did anything else. Back in the day, the hardcore champion did other things. This was another thing that they've kind of gotten away with, right? It was not uncommon, for example, for the European champion to become the number one contender, right? That meant that the European title meant something. Nowadays, if you're the Intercontinental Champion, it's better to not be the Intercontinental Champion, right? Like, for example, right now, Who's the U.S. champion right now? Well, the IC champion is Dominic, but, Dominic's a good example, right? Dominic is not going to be the number one contender. Dominic is not higher up on the card than Drew McIntyre, who hasn't had a title in like a fucking 1,000 years. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's get to it. The first match is going to be Mankind versus mystery opponent. McMahon comes out and he sarcastically introduces Dwayne Gill, who would go on to become Gilbert as the first opponent. Dwayne Gill is a jobber, right? But today, he'd probably fit in as one of the El Grande Americano lackeys. You know what I mean? Today, he'd probably have a spot on the roster. Anyways, Mankind's in a suit. The match is about 30 seconds. Mankind beats the shit out of him, double arm DDTs him, and pins him. Mankind is fucking awesome. All right. It's just really cool because Mankind's trying to impress Vince. He's got this eerie, but childish kind of like a creepy childish song. But you know what I'm talking about? Great entrance theme, great presentation for Mankind. We learned that earlier tonight on Heat, Sable and Jackie had a confrontation. Sable is pissed as Kevin Kelly interviews her. Immediately after, without any missed beats, King and JR entertain us with commentary as Jeff Jarrett's iconic music plays. And he comes out with Deborah. You know what I'm talking about. One of the best theme songs in the Attitude Era, in my opinion. It goes a little something like this. Down, 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 down. You know what I'm talking about? Classic song. He comes out and it's gonna be Jeff Jarrett versus Al Snow. So Al Snow comes out to his theme song. What does everybody want? Head! The people cheer, right? For those that don't know, Al Snow had a gimmick that he was fucking insane and also a jobber. This was part of his gimmick. And part of the insanity half of his gimmick was that he carried around a mannequin head called Head, right? Head, for those that don't know, is slang for oral sex, right? I don't know. I'm sure the kids call it something else now. Probably something with 2 Z's in it, Like all these words like Riz, Glizzy, like all these even the sound of the words is like feminine nowadays in slang, right? So anyways, Al Snow comes out with Head, dances like a bastard in the middle of the ring, right? And then eventually the match starts. The match culminates with Jeff Jarrett going for Head and Al Snow getting the guitar. Al Snow tries to swing, misses. Jarrett hits him lightly with Head. Then Jeff Jarrett tries to charge at him in the corner. Al Snow boots him, grabs Head, smashes Jarrett in the head with Head, and that's it. 1, 2, 3. Al Snow advances. Immediately, it's time for the third match. It's now the Big Boss Man versus Stone Cold, motherfucks. Stone Cold comes out looking like a complete badass. And he starts really quick opening a can of whoop ass on Boss Man. What? I said he opens up a can of whoop ass. Austin hits the Thez press and does the forearm drop thing that he does, right? Boss Man low blows Stone Cold right in front of the ref, Mike Chioda, but doesn't get DQ'd. Jerry the King Lawler suggests that Mike Chioda is biased because he works for McMahon. This is a good cover. If Michael Cole was here, he would probably say, he didn't get all of it there. He didn't get all of it, John. You know what I mean? That's what he would say. He would pretend that what happened is something that like the low blow didn't connect or something, This was right in front of him, but that's how they decided to handle it as a good cover. Big Boss Man is massive. If Boss Man were around today, in my opinion, he would be a massive star. Like absolutely nobody would ever be talking about like Obafemi or Tony D'Angelo or Trick Williams if someone like Boss Man was around. He would like tower over all of these guys. You know what I'm saying? He was like bigger, stronger, more badass looking. There would be no scenario in which anyone in NXT right now would have any chance against Boss Man 1998 in a fight. He would beat the shit out of everyone. Probably in the Attitude Era too. This guy was just massive. And you could just tell he was a fucking asshole in real life. And that's the impression that I get. But he entertained me as a kid, so rest in peace, Big Boss Man. Anyways, the match continues. Stone Cold's beating that ass. And basically what happens is Bossman eventually nightsticks Austin like Stryker from Mortal Kombat and beats on him outside. Austin wins by DQ, but Bossman is weakening him because Bossman is a henchman of McMahon. Now, for the smart ones that are watching this video, I'm sure you've already seen a theme here. Thus far, absolutely everything that has happened has had a purpose, and thus far, everyone that has been involved has had a reason to be involved. Dwayne Gill, massive jobber. Mankind, one of the favorites. Jeff Jarrett and Al Snow, that one is just there for later on because Al Snow and Mankind have always had history, so you need Jeff Jarrett for that. But Al Snow is not there by coincidence. Afterwards, in this third match, Big Boss Man is the henchman of Vince McMahon. His goal is not to win the WWE title, the WWF title, I should say. His goal is to do McMahon's bidding, which he does by beating the shit out of Stone Cold. After this, it's time for X-Pac. X-Pac! It's X-Pac versus who X-Pac happens to be the European champion, and he will be wrestling the real man's man, Steven Regal, who many people probably know better as William Regal. But before he was William Regal, he was the real man's man. He would come out in like fucking flannel with his sleeves cut off and like a hard hat. You know, look it up, motherfuckers, for those that don't know. And his theme song was fire. It went a little something like this. He's a man, da-da-da-da, a real man. It was just fucking goofy as shit, but it was good. This match is one of the longer matches, and once again, the match has purpose. What happens is, both X-Pac and William Regal, Steven Regal, I should say, get counted out. Double DQ. They had their own feud, in the background, right? X-Pac was European champion. William Regal, Steven Regal, thought that X-Pac was an embarrassment in terms of being the European champion because William Regal, Steven Regal, is European. He's from the UK, right? Double DQ, or double countout, I should say. Same shit would have happened. A double countout means that neither of these guys advances. Vince McMahon is watching backstage. He's furious. He wants one of them to advance because the winner of this match is going to be wrestling Stone Cold in the next bracket, right? So all of a sudden, this meaningless throwaway match has a lot of purpose, right? Because William Regal and X-Pac hate each other, they get a double countout. That means that Stone Cold gets a bye. This is a thorn in McMahon's ass, right? Because it's getting in the way of his plan. So that's a good way to do this. I really enjoyed the way they did that. Next, it's time for Shamrock versus Goldust. Shamrock is also an agent of Vince McMahon. All these people were part of the corporation, or would be afterwards, right? Shamrock gets set up in the corner for the Shattered Dreams, which is a great move for Goldust because he's like this pervert, right? And he wants to kick you in the balls. It's perfect, right? So that shit happens. But the referee gets in the way. The Jimmy Corderas, I believe the referee's name is. It just came to me right now. It's crazy how much I remember from like the 90s. I remember these people's names. Anyways, Shamrock, who by the way looks like a complete monster, goes up to the top rope, does a diving Hurricane Rana. I will admit, it's not the best diving Hurricane Rana, but someone like Ken Shamrock shouldn't be doing that kind of shit. Like, he's another one. If Ken Shamrock was in NXT right now, obviously, like, it goes without saying that in real life, he would beat up everyone currently in the WWE roster, like, if he was, like, in his prime. It's not even close, right? But even if you didn't know that, if you didn't know that he's a legit UFC legend, right? Just by looking at him and his physique, you'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, Obafemi wouldn't even be intimidating next to Ken Shamrock. Like, that Ken Shamrock would murder this guy in 3 seconds. Tony D'Angelo, he's a collegiate athlete. You know that Ken Shamrock would body this guy in literally seconds. Again, even if you didn't know that Ken Shamrock was a tough guy in real life, just by looking at him, you'd be like, this guy is a superior human to Tony D'Angelo and Obafemi. He's a different species. He's like close to Brock Lesnar in terms of his jackness. He was just a beast. So basically, after the Hurricane Rana, Shamrock hits up belly to belly, puts on the ankle lock, Goldust taps. That's the end of that. So another one of McMahon's guys gets through up in this bitch. Michael Cole, a young Michael Cole, tells us that Stone Cold refuses medical attention, but Cole says he knows that Austin won't bitch out, basically, right? I really like this mini segment because just the part where we learn that Austin is refusing medical attention. Nowadays, instead, you have like Kevin Owens coming out and being like, I have to leave. I don't know if I'll come back. Stone Cold would be like, I ain't going nowhere. And then he'd give a stunner to like Alicia Fox or something. You know what I mean? Whatever the fuck her name is. Like, she would just like be defiant the whole way through. Anyways, the next match is The Rock versus Triple H. Obviously a WrestleMania main event worthy match. However, Patterson and Briscoe come out and they say that basically Triple H isn't here, right? JR explains in commentary that Triple H is out because he has he has recently had knee surgery, right? So instead, Briscoe says that The Rock is going to be fighting a replacement. There are no forfeits, so he brings out the big boss man, right? Because the corporation doesn't like The Rock. Briscoe and Patterson and Sergeant Slaughter are against The Rock because they're Vince's stooges, right? So Bossman comes back, he runs into the ring, The Rock just rolls him up in a small package in like 1 second, pins him 1, 2, 3. That's the end of that, right? Again, this match was to put over The Rock, and this match was also there to remind us that the corporation hates The Rock, right? That they're trying to screw over primarily Stone Cold and secondarily The Rock, right? That's what's happening. And there was also more reasons why this happened that were revealed later on, and that obviously made sense once everything was said and done. More on that later, cooks. If you don't know what happens in the pay-per-view, definitely keep listening to my video, motherfucks. Anyways, because reading Wikipedia is not going to tell you all this shit. So anyways, after this, it's time for Kane versus The Undertaker, player. Another WrestleMania main event worthy match. This is a typical Kane Undertaker match. This is before The Undertaker was considered to be this great in-ring worker. This was when Kane and Undertaker had the exact same moveset. They would just punch each other. They would do the occasional big boot. Kane would do like a flying clothesline. And then they did the chokeslam and tombstone as signatures and finishers, respectively, right? Both had the same finishers. They both did the tombstone. And Kane and Undertaker both did the chokeslam as like a signature move. Then later on, Kane made the chokeslam his finisher. But, you know, that's not how it always was. So basically, The Undertaker is like the bad guy, right? He's the heel, kind of, because he's with Paul Bearer, and Paul Bearer is like the shitty father of both Kane and Undertaker in kayfabe, and Kane is a burn victim, right? Kane whoops that ass, right? Everybody loves Kane. This was a time when Kane was just better than The Undertaker, right? I mean, in my opinion, for a long time, he was better, but in this time, it's not even close. This was like kind of like, I don't want to say an out-of-shape Undertaker, but he just didn't seem like he had it in him, right? And Kane was just like a complete monster. So basically, Kane's beating that ass. He grabs Taker, does a chokeslam on this bitch, right? But Paul Bearer distracts Kane. Taker gets up, tombstones him. Bearer grabs Kane's leg so Kane can't kick out. So Kane loses, and The Undertaker advances, motherfucks. Next up, it's Foley versus Al Snow. The match is a regular match, but basically the point of this match is to show that, that Mick Foley, like, doesn't care about his friends, at least in the short term, right? And that he's full corporate, right? Al Snow gets his ass beat. Foley hits the double arm DDT and then finds Mr. Sacco. That was another reason for this match. That he finally finds Mr. Sacco, puts the mandible claw on Al Snow, and wins. Likewise, the previous match between Kane and The Undertaker had a very important point. The idea was that Kane got screwed. This was not something that just happened and then they just forgot about it. Kane got screwed, and this was very relevant later on, motherfucks. After this, it's time for The Rock versus Shamrock. Shamrock puts on the ankle lock, but The Rock gets the ropes. Bossman then like causes a distraction, right? And The Rock ends up winning, right? It's as simple as that. Now, the idea is the Bossman is involved in every fucking match that The Rock and Stone Cold are part of, right? But again, there was a purpose for this. The purpose for this one is not inherently obvious, and I won't spoil it until the end of the video, but all of this is going to make sense at some point, right? This was such a well-executed storyline, honestly. One of the best of all time. Anyways, after this, it's time for a match that has nothing to do with the Deadly Games tournament. It's Sable versus Jackie. The match will always be remembered as the moment that Mark Mero's career ended. Sable power bombs him on the outside. Mark Mero was a big guy, right? And Sable, like, obviously could not do this without Mark Mero doing it, power bombing himself, basically, right? And then she goes back in the ring, beats Jackie's ass, power bombs her. Sable's the new champ. We move on to one of the main matches. It's now Mankind versus Stone Cold. This is something that could have been the final in the tournament, right? This was presented as the most important match because Mankind is Vince McMahon's champion and Stone Cold is Vince McMahon's antagonist, right? So this was a good match. Like, the other matches were short, but this one was not. This was a good match. Austin's whooping that ass. Austin was untouchable during this time, right? But Mankind is holding his own, fighting back. Eventually, Stone Cold, who had recently been rehired to a 5-year contract by Shane McMahon in kayfabe, he whoops that ass and basically gives the stunner to Mick Foley, aka Mankind. He goes for the pin, but Vince McMahon, who had been in a wheelchair the entire night, miraculously gets up from the wheelchair and pulls out Mike Chioda. I believe it was Mike Chioda, I don't remember this moment, but he pulls out the referee, and then Patterson holds him as McMahon just beats the shit out of the referee. He punches him in the face, knocking him out, and then he starts kicking him too. It was really overkill, but I really liked it. After this, back in the ring, Mankind's pants fall, and Austin stunners him again. So that's it. 2 times, 2 stunners. Austin covers him, and Shane McMahon, the hero of the night, comes in a referee shirt. 1, 2, and then Shane stops counting. And then he flips off Austin. Double birds in Austin's face. In this commotion, Austin's trying to chase Shane out. Sergeant Slaughter comes in, holds Austin as Briscoe hits him with a chair, and then Mankind pins him as Shane counts 1, 2, 3. So the McMahons have screwed Stone Cold. At this moment, the McMahons and all of their associates run out of the arena, they get in a car and drive away. Stone Cold steals a car like in Grand Theft Auto and chases after them. After this, it's time for The Undertaker player versus The Rock. The match is rather competitive because both of these guys are presented as massive deals, right? Boss Man comes here and he stops The Rock from doing a people's elbow. Boss Man was involved in every Rock and Stone Cold match. The Rock does like a scoop slam, right? Because he didn't do the spine buster at the time. Scoop slam, and he goes for the people's elbow, right? When he goes off the ropes, Boss Man grabs his foot. Then the Undertaker gets up, Boss Man gets in his face too, Taker punches him. At this point, Kane, remember him, motherfucks? Kane comes back, and Kane gets revenge on The Undertaker, right? Who screwed him earlier. So there was a purpose for this. Kane, instead of beating Undertaker's ass, he just chokeslams The Rock right in front of the referee. The ref has no choice but to call for a DQ. So The Rock advances by DQ, and then Kane and Undertaker start fighting like throughout the arena, right? So once again, this sets up the next match. Now it's time for another break from the tournament. It's time for the New Age Outlaws, motherfucks. There is a massive sign in the crowd with, I shit you not, the entire Road Dogg catchphrase. This was 3 rows, right? It was maybe like 10 people wide and 3 rows tall, right? They had this massive sign. There was like 30 people holding up the, like parts of the sign, right? So Road Dogg comes out and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, D-Generation X proudly brings to you its WWF Tag Team Champions of the World." You know what I'm saying? And then everyone loses their mind. Everyone says it along, right? Road Dogg was crazy crazy charismatic. Billy Gunn says, this is for China and Triple H. He says, if you're not down with DX, he says, "I got 2 words for you." And everyone says, "Suck it." And it's going to be them versus the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher, and the team of Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. The match is kind of whack, I will not lie. It ends with Billy Gunn hitting a famouser, an underrated move, and going for the pin on Mosh. Mark Henry goes for the splash on Billy Gunn as he's pinning Mosh. Billy gets out of the way, and Mark Henry hits Mosh and pins him. But that's not it, right? Billy Gunn breaks up the cover. Some more shit goes down in the ring. There's these weird distractions. Everyone's still kind of there, but they're not paying attention. Billy just hits a pile driver on Mosh and pins him. That's it, right? Nothing crazy. It wasn't a good match by any means, but it was basically there to serve a purpose. The purpose was to create a break between the semifinals of the tournament and now the finals, right? So it's time for the main event. This main event was awesome. The question in everyone's minds, of course, was one. There was one primary question here. Can The Rock overcome the odds of Vince McMahon? The insurmountable odds that even Stone Cold couldn't overcome, right? Can The Rock become that dude tonight? Can The Rock become WWE champion? Or will Mr. Mankind's dastardly champion, Mankind, Mr. McMahon, I should say, dastardly champion Mankind, will he be the one to, start the McFoley era, the Mankind era, and in many ways, the Vincent Kennedy McMahon era? So the match starts. The match is basically a hardcore match, right? In this particular case, this makes sense, right? Because someone has to be crowned WWE champion. And surely we're not going to do that by DQ, right? That would be stupid. Then Kane could come out and chokeslam whoever the fuck he doesn't want to be champion, right? So this is going to be a no DQ match eventually. So the match starts. And it's like a 90s hardcore match, right? The Rock beats the hell out of Mankind. There's a spot where Mankind holds the stairs, and The Rock just chairs him on the stairs and pins Mankind's head with the chairs. Then The Rock starts beating the shit out of him. And the whole time I can think to myself, imagine this and compare this to like the Jey Uso like chair interferences. You know when Jey Uso comes in with a chair, right? As the music plays, he runs into the ring, and the first thing he always does is he ducks. Right? Anybody that knows that Jey Uso's going to come interfere, all they got to do is not swing high. He ducks, turns around, and then chairs someone with the edge of the chair in the stomach, and then hits them in the back, because you don't do head chair shots anymore. Back then you could, and they were fucking awesome. Anyways, this is kind of like an ongoing scenario and a recurring trope in like Rock and Mankind matches. In many ways, it's a recurring trope in Mankind matches because some of the matches that I've seen with Mankind, like Triple H versus Mankind at Royal Rumble 2000, like, dude, like, I almost started like feeling bad because Triple H is just hitting this guy with chairs. He's also getting hit with chairs, to be fair. This match was no different. So there's an ass whooping. The fans are firmly behind The Rock, obviously, right? And Mr. McMahon is obviously firmly behind Mankind. The Rock manages to hit the people's elbow, but Mankind kicks out. Mankind then hits a double arm DDT, right? He then goes for Socko. He locks in Socko, and The Rock is fading. And JR tells us that the Mankind era is about to dawn. The referee checks The Rock, whose arm doesn't drop at 3. You know, he does the 3 arm drops. At the third one, The Rock comes back to life. He comes back to life. He fights back. Rock bottom. Both men are down. The Rock goes for a cover. He manages to crawl and goes for a cover. But Mankind kicks out at 2, motherfucks. The Rock then gets up, looks at Vince and Shane in disgust, raises an eyebrow. The Rock then grabs Mankind and goes for a sharpshooter at Survivor Series. Vince says, "Ring the bell." The bell rings, The Rock wins. Shane comes in, raises his arm, but The Rock rejects him. What is happening? Everyone's wondering the same thing. Howard Finkel announces that The Rock is the new WWF champion, right? After this, Mankind is all confused because Mankind, motherfucks, never tapped. You understand me? The Rock then hugs Vince and Shane. What is happening? Cucksties, you know what I'm saying? After this hug, Vince gets the mic and he says, "Seeing is believing. And you can believe that Vince didn't screw the people. The people screwed the people." Vince says the fans are as dumb as Mankind. Vince says he will elaborate on Raw. This is extremely important. Now, obviously, everyone's going to watch Raw after watching this pay-per-view anyways. But if you didn't know, now you know. Even if you didn't plan on watching Raw, after this pay-per-view, now you know this is going to explain the entire plan on Raw, right? At this point, Mankind is confused, gets the mic and says, like he tells the ref first, he didn't tap. Vince says, tonight was great because Stone Cold was royally screwed in this very ring, right? Vince says that he hates the people, but someone else does too. The Rock hates the people. The Rock gets the mic and says the fans can kiss his ass. Foley gets the mic and says, look, The Rock's a great guy and everything, because Foley's like kind of retarded. But he says, Vince, correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to lose the match, I have to get pinned or have to submit. And I didn't do either. Vince says, oh, you don't get it? And then Foley's like, no, I don't. And Vince says, get this. And The Rock hits Foley with the belt from behind and Rock bottoms him. And at this point in time, one of the greatest characters of all time, Corporate Rock, is born. The corporate champion himself. But it's not over yet, motherfuckers. This is how great these pay-per-views were. As you think it's done, Stone Cold is back from his car chase. He comes in to fight The Rock. He stunners him and throws him out like a piece of shit. He grabs the belt. And then while this is happening, Mankind, who has effectively turned face, this is a double turn. Mankind becomes the sympathetic hero who turns face, while The Rock obviously turned heel, right? And this would lead to like a really interesting dynamic later, because a lot of these things would converge. For those that don't know, The Undertaker's Dark Ministry would join the corporation, and they would be the corporate ministry. Triple H in China eventually would join. Everything would get fucked, right? As we already kind of know. And then what would happen after this, motherfucks, is there'd be like very few heroes. There was a point where like the only heroes were like Stone Cold, like half of Kane. Kane was like a half hero once in a while, and X-Pac, right? It was like Stone Cold and X-Pac and Kane versus like the entire roster. You know, it was fucking great times. But this is not that time. We'll talk about that another time. The Stone Cold sees Mankind barely getting up, and he goes to help Mankind. And then he stunners him too, because that's how Stone Cold does things, motherfucks. And then he goes out to the ringside and starts beating the shit out of The Rock again, as JR tells us to have a good night. This is a 10 out of 10 pay-per-view. This is one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. Now, one thing that I want to say is that a lot of people, for example, people that, you know, talk about Okada and Nakamura, right? These people are not going to like this pay-per-view because the matches were very short. Even though the pay-per-view was 3 hours, like I said, there's 18 matches. There was no time wasted, but even so, 18 matches would have to be extremely short, right? So with that being said, a lot of people that are looking for like wrist locks are not going to like this. This, however, is the epitome of what wrestling is. The in-ring stuff is irrelevant. The in-ring stuff exists only to tell the story. The story was brilliant. As I have illustrated throughout this retro review, all elements of the pay-per-view, right, either had something to do with the story, or there was a few matches that were just there in order to like explain why the tag teams still exist, right? You know, the women's match is there to have a women's match and so forth, right? Every other match did a thing. And everybody involved in this tournament, right, from X-Pac to Kane, this would be the beginning of these massive storyline pushes that would last until basically the invasion angle, right? Like Kane and X-Pac had like a 3-year program. You know what I mean? That culminated shortly before, you know, the invasion angle. But at the invasion angle, like they did other things. But up until that point, they were like intertwined, right? And they became a team shortly after this event because of the fact that they were both screwed by people that would end up in the corporation, right? And then, of course, there's screw jobs in there as well. But, you know, I don't want to waste that on this pay-per-view because we'll talk about that in other pay-per-views and other retro reviews. So, in my opinion, this is the perfect wrestling event because there was a lot of things done. There was a lot of cool moves, right? You saw a lot of finishers. You saw, like, the people's elbow, like, 3 times. You know, you saw stunners. You saw everything there's to see. And furthermore, it was interesting and compelling because even though, obviously, everyone knows that Al Snow and Jeff Jarrett were not going to become WWF champion. Everybody knows that the real man's man, Steven Regal, was not going to become champion. But nevertheless, right? Nevertheless, the kids didn't know that, number one. And two, even the adults. Like in any tournament where Kane and Undertaker in the 90s and 2000s were involved, they could win the tournament, right? And obviously, Stone Cold was a massive favorite. The Undertaker was a favorite. Mankind was like the bad guy going into it, and The Rock was this like not dark horse because he would have been like the third most likely guy to win, but he was presented as an up and comer, right? And then there's other people in the tournament that they're not going to win, but they can have a good showing, right? I'm talking about X-Pac, who was on the rise. I'm talking about Kane, other people that were in there. The Big Boss Man, even though he didn't win, he lost 2 matches. In fact, the Big Boss Man was central to this tournament. He was central to this pay-per-view. Right? There's a lot of things happening here. In this pay-per-view, more things have happened with regards to the World Heavyweight Champion and the World Heavyweight Championship, really, because there was no champion when this tournament, I should say, started, right? But more things happened with respect to the champion and the championship in this pay-per-view than have happened since Vince McMahon left WWE, combined. Like, the entire Cody Rhodes title reign is not as compelling as this one-night tournament. The entire, I have to finish the story, is worse for business. It's poorly booked compared to this, and obviously, it's not as exciting, and it will not stand the test of time. Also, nobody really watched it. Millions of people watched this shit. You know, back in 1998, this was like one of the comments in one of my videos said, you know, like they were talking about how I was saying that there's always an excuse now, you know, oh, it's Halloween, oh, it's the World Series. And one of the haters fans, who's obviously one of the smart ones, he basically said, he was like, look, you know, back in the day, if it's Christmas or Halloween or Thanksgiving, wrestling elevated these events. That's the best way to put it. Wrestling did not get in the way of these events. Like Survivor Series is built around Thanksgiving weekend for a reason. The idea is everyone's on break, and the idea is Sunday, Thanksgiving Sunday, everyone's pissed off because it's time to go back to work or school the next day. So you cap this off with Survivor Series, right? Monday Night Raw, if that falls on a Christmas, that makes your Christmas. Like, I would look forward to the days when they would have, like, Raw on Christmas or New Year's or any other holiday. You see what I'm saying? This was the way it was, right? It's not a coincidence that Raw is on Mondays and Mondays are disproportionately represented in holidays for obvious reasons, right? Raw and SmackDown elevated these holidays and other, you know, not federal holidays maybe, but things like Halloween. They were elevated by it. You know, nowadays, like, people are like, well, of course no one's going to watch Raw. It's Halloween. What the fuck? What do you mean it's Halloween? I watch Raw on Halloween. As a matter of fact, I made sure, motherfucks, that if me and my friends when I was a kid went trick-or-treating, I'd be back in time for Raw. I'm not missing fucking Raw to see a bunch of kids dressed like fucking, like the Scream Mask guy. You lost your mind, cuts? You know? You think I give a shit about Christmas if The Rock and Stone Cold are on TV? You think I give a flying fuck? Now, I don't give a shit at all. Now it's like, I love Christmas. I'm a family man now. The hater's married. You know? I love Christmas. And quite frankly, if it's Christmas, even if it's just me, my wife, and my dog, like, chances are, I'm not gonna watch Raw on Christmas. You know? I don't give a fuck. It's Christmas, motherfuckers. But that's only because if I watch, it's gonna be like Cody Rhodes versus Carmelo Hayes or some other bullshit. Oh, it's Ilya Dragunov. I don't give a fuck, you know? Like, I'm not watching Ilya Dragunov versus Sami Zayn over spending time by the Christmas tree. But when I was a kid, I could give a shit about Christmas if you had, like, The Rock and Stone Cold, cucks. So I think I've made my point, and I think it's clear to everyone that's smart that wrestling just was a million times better. And here we are now, cucks. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for Friday Night SmackDown. I also have something in the works. The biggest mega rant of all time. It's going to be like a WWE history piece, basically. So that's coming to you soon, cucks. I got to think about it a little bit, but, you know, one of these days. So with that being said, have a good weekend. See you guys tomorrow, cucksuckies.